Well, way back in the beginning of America, Benjamin Franklin once said, there are two certainties in life, death and taxes. And between estate taxes and inheritance taxes and death taxes, it's possible that Big Brother will get a bigger chunk of your cash than your actual brother. So how can you protect your money, quote, beyond the grave? Take a look.
Jeffrey Condon has been practicing law since 1987 and has helped thousands of families sort out inheritance issues. Jeff's dad, Gerald, was also an attorney, and 20 years ago, they co-authored Beyond the Grave.
When it comes to dividing the inheritance, family loyalty goes out the window, and it's a whole new ballgame.
In his newly revised edition, Jeff sheds light on the right and wrong way of leaving money to your children and how to keep your family together while dividing your estate.
Well, Jeffrey Condon is here with us now, and we thank you for Jeffrey. It's good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Pat, thank you again for having me back.
It's my pleasure. Your book, Beyond the Grave, you know, mother and father are there, and the children all stand around and say, we love each other, and we'll never fight. Whatever you want to do, Mom and Dad, will be just fine. You say it doesn't work that way.
It really doesn't, Pat. There is one harsh but universal truth, and that is children have an expectation of being treated fairly in the inheritance plan. And if that expectation is not met, or even if there's a perception that it's not met, then there will be jealousy, there will be conflict, and there will be destruction of the family relationship.
Well, you've got one son, and man, he's made it. Maybe he started a .com company, and he's got millions, and the other is out there as a factory worker, and so Mom and Dad leave the factory and work all their money. That's not the way to go, huh?
Well, that happens a lot, Pat. In the minds of those parents, they're doing economic justice by leaving more of their assets to the child who needs it most. But you have to look at it from your successful child's standpoint. That successful child may say, gee, look what I've done. I've worked hard to achieve success, to bring honor to myself, to my parents, to my family, and to God. But look what my parents did. They punished my success, and they rewarded my sister's failure. And that successful son may never speak to his sister again because he's transferring that resentment.
That's the way it is. So they don't want economic justice. they want what they consider fairness.
Well, that is correct. You know, Pat, when, and let's talk about the lifetime gifts. When, we're parents, and what we do is we help our children at a time when they need help. And when we give that financial help for weddings, cars, education, whatever, we're not keeping a scorecard. We just do what we do.
Yeah.
But there are other people who are keeping a scorecard, Pat, and that is your other children. And they're not telling you about it, but they are, because they don't want to give you the false impression that they're greedy. So when you die and you have a living trust, and that living trust says everything goes to your 3 children in equal shares, to your children, if that scorecard tally reveals a substantial discrepancy in the amount of lifetime gifts that you gave to a child, to all the children, then the ones who got less are actually going to put pressure on the one who got more to part with the share of his inheritance to equalize for the parent's failure to equalize.
Well, what about the spouse? Most estates, you just leave it all to the spouse, but that's not a smart thing either, according to what you say.
Well, when I go into the nursing homes, Pat, it's not a lot of elderly men I see languishing in the hallways. It's elderly women, because I know this sounds funny, but women are not so lucky like men who sometimes just die overnight. The women may survive their husbands by 20 years, and a lot can happen in that time. And during that time, mom may enter a twilight zone of incapacity. And during that time, there's a chance that she may lose ownership and control of her wealth. So what we want to do is come up with a plan to protect mom's ownership and control of her assets so that they're around to be used for her benefit, for her care and comfort and medical and health. Because she may wind up losing her assets to the last caretaker or to children who may be grasping for an early inheritance.
She may also be prey to some fortune seeker who comes along and gets married to her and takes the money away.
Well, that's the other goal. Yeah. We want to be certain that mom doesn't divert the family money out of the bloodline with a new husband, or even worse, her new husband's kids from his first marriage.
Well, now, what about, you've said that patriotism doesn't require anybody to pay more taxes than he has to. How do you minimize the tax bite?
You know, my father was fond of saying that. In fact, that's his quote. But Pat, what we have today is an estate tax exemption, which means the amount of money and property that you can own without the IRS hitting you up for an estate tax after you're gone.
Yeah.
That estate tax exemption is $5.4 million. 99.99% of Americans don't have over $5.4 million.
That's right.
So the estate tax in America has essentially been wiped out, except for maybe that 0.4%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's actually it's a good thing.
When did they put that in? That was just recently, I guess.
That the new tax law came in 2013.
Well, that's quite an exemption.
It is, in fact, one of the impetuses for the preparation of this revised edition of Beyond the Grave was to incorporate new information about the new estate tax law.
So, what do you do to qualify? You don't have to do anything to qualify.
Well, certainly. I mean, the concept of estate tax planning is own less. The IRS cannot impose an estate tax on what you don't own. So, if you have assets that you don't need or you won't miss, then making gifts of those assets, that's probably the simplest way to save estate taxes.
Well, last question. A person says, who cares? I'm going to be dead anyway. I don't care what happens to my money. Answer that one.
I have two answers.
All right.
First of all, the inheritance plan is the last great lesson you're going to leave to your children. If that lesson goes sour, so too will your children's memory of you.
All right.
And Pat, finally, last week you did a segment on retirement planning.
That's right.
And you said that it is to live a godly life by planning for your retirement. Well, I submit that it's also living a godly life to plan your estate in such a way that it does no harm to your kids, and so that the assets are around for your kids and ultimately your grandchildren.
Makes wonderful sense. It's called Beyond the Grave. People can get this where? Bookstores? Or?
Bookstores all over America
Amazon.
and on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com.
All right. This is an interesting book. Jeffrey Condon, Esquire, Beyond the Grave. It's got a lot of information you need to know. You don't have to have a lot of money to look after your children and make sure it's equitable. So this is something for you. You can get it wherever books are sold. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you again, Pat.
It's my pleasure.